Welcome to a sadly special fan Flak. I'm sure, as most of you know, we lost Lara Parker on October 12th. And in fact, she has already been returned home to Tennessee. And she is, I think, the last of the big names from Dark Shadows. Jonathan Fred, of course, Grayson Hall, and Lara Parker. And of course, we still have David Selby with us and a few others. I knew Laura not terribly well, but I knew her. We knew each other by name. And my fondest memory of her is when we had the Dark Shadows companion uh, rat party, I guess you'd call it. And she had written a foreword for the book. And one of my nicest memories was we were approached by the lady from People magazine who were there covering the launch. And they were talking to Laura and asking her how she was with her book and its release. And she reached over to me and brought me over and she said, "It's Melody's book. She wrote it." So I just wrote a couple of pages. And as I had become accustomed to being downplayed in that circle of things, I was very, very touched by that, and it made me feel good. And I hugged her and thanked her later. She did that sort of thing. She was thoughtful to people, and she would remember people when, for instance, if you'd had a loved one pass, she would give you her sympathies. And she almost made it to 85. She died in her birth month, which is quite common. And she passed from, in her sleep, from cancer. And her last months were not wonderful ones, as I've heard. But she went out in her sleep and she went out with the love of millions. So I suppose that's as good as anybody can get. She's survived by her husband, Jim, and her children. I hope I'm getting them all right. Jim, Rick, and Katie. I believe Caitlin is her name. And she had, of course, many friends, many pets, and just as I said, many friends, many fans, and many of her fans became her friends. One of her friends was the TV writer and publisher and everything extraordinaire, Debbie Smith Dougherty. And she's with me today to remember Lara and to discuss her memories of her. Would you please introduce? I read my notes. Pardon me. Would you please welcome Debbie? Welcome,
Hello.
Debbie.
Thank you.
Of course, I wish it was under better circumstances that you're with us.
Yeah.
Everybody asking me, first of all, how your health is.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm doing really well. I had COVID after San Diego Comic-Con and I was in the hospital for a while, but I have fully recovered and I'm doing quite well. So thank you.
Well, we all consider you one of us.
Well, it's a Dark Shadows fan. Yes.
Absolutely.
I
Well,
mean, I was part of the Prodigy group.
you were. You started out from the beginning with all of us. Now, I know that you worked for Dan Curtis for a while.
I did.
And can you tell me a little bit about your background just to catch everybody up?
Okay. I when I first got into television, I was a writer's assistant, and I started selling scripts as a freelancer. So I still worked as a uh, writer's assistant, and I got to work with Dan, and it was incredible. It was a great experience. I loved Dan. I loved working for Dan. Uh, there's lots of stories about Dan, but I didn't see that side of him. None of the
Everybody's
girls.
different
He
to
loved.
everybody.
He loved the girls in the office. He did. He loved the girls in the office, but he didn't realize that I didn't realize, because at the time I was a kid when all this stuff was coming out. So I didn't know it was Dan Curtis. So Dark Shadows, Night Stalker, Trilogy of Terror, and then the other horror movies that he'd done. And I remember one time he said something about some movie he had done. I said, "Oh, I know that movie." And he goes, when I was hiring you, I didn't know I was hiring my biggest fan, because he didn't understand fandom. So I'm glad he didn't know I was a fan of all his work, because I don't know if I would have gotten the job.
Yeah, that tends to be a drawback with some people.
Sure.
And I all the nice stories I've heard about Dan have been from you. Um, I've heard a few other ones, but everybody seems to remember the bad stuff. And
Honestly, like I said, I don't remember any bad stuff. He was a perfectionist, but I was the writer's assistant, and what I did was I sat at the computer and he sat beside me and he would tell me what to write. Okay. And we would work on scripts together, and I would give him ideas and stuff. you know, I,
I have math hall memories in my head. I'm sorry.
okay.
Go ahead.
But anyhow, when I first started with him, he gave me something to type that, was already there, and then we were going to work on it. He wanted me to put it in the computer. So I'm a touch typist. So I was just typing along, and he goes, "What's that? What's that? What's that?" And I looked at the screen, and my fingers had gotten off one. And I just took a deep breath, and I looked at him and I said, "I was typing in code." And he went, "That's what I thought." And from then on, we were fine.
There you go.
I
Now I
guess
know
maybe because I didn't let him intimidate me or something.
that is exactly it. Grayson told me that her first meeting with Dan, he had started trying to intimidate, and she got up in his face, and there was no intimidating Grayson Hall.
Well, I didn't get in his face. I deflected it with humor.
There you go.
So,
That's another good way, and
yes.
that was Laura's way too of dealing with Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she would often say that humor was her best
Mm-hmm.
rooted defense with very forward people.
Well, that's how I met Laura.
Mm-hmm.
By that time, I had written Trials of Rose O'Neill, Dr. Quinn. No, Murder, She Wrote. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And so when I introduced myself as Dan's assistant. And then I said, I'm also a television writer. And from that time on, I was a writer to her. I was not anything else. So. It was that story of yours of uh, Laura saying it's Melody's book.
Yes.
Um, that is just so Laura. That's what she did. You know, she was very generous and, um, you know, just a wonderful person. And
That
she loved
touched
her
me.
fans. She loved
Yeah,
her fans.
that touched me so much. And at particularly at that point in time,
Hmm.
for reasons my friends know, um, that was just such an important thing for someone to say to me. And
Hmm.
she said it in a big room with people around, including People magazine.
Right.
And it was that was special.
Hmm.
That I know she had a great deal of respect for you.
Thank you.
She would the people she befriended in the industry. She tended to single out people she thought very highly of. You and Jim Pierce is another
Hmm.
Derbyshire connected person that she thought a lot of, and quite a few people. Now, you when you first met her, did you become friends right away, or did that develop from there?
Um, you know, I can't quite remember. Like I said, I met her for the first time at that Dark Shadows convention that I where I first met all of the Prodigy people.
Right,
Um,
where you walked up to me and said, "Hi."
well, this was, after we had already gone through the thing of Dan's dog on the because you didn't believe me. Um, but anyway, she took me around and introduced me to all the actors as a writer. Uh, and she sat and she talked with me. And I think we exchanged information at that time. I can't quite remember, but I can't quite remember how it developed. I know that I then went on to, be on staff I left Dan's to be on staff on Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman.
Right.
And we just kept in touch a lot. We became writing friends. I would read her stuff. She would read my stuff. Um, and she came to like my 40th birthday party. I had this huge party.
I remember I got an invitation.
But you didn't come.
I
You missed
could.
a great party.
I was sick.
Oh no.
That was very.
Yeah. So yeah, she and Jim came to the party. I was going to actually go on vacation with them. Um, they were going out on a sailboat and go diving and stuff, and I was going to go with them. But it ended up I couldn't go. Um, you know, so I'm not quite sure how it developed, but it just developed.
Well, you had been an Angelique fan, so
I've
uh,
been a fan. I mean, I started as a fan because I was one of those people running home from school to watch Dark Shadows,
right.
and Angelique was my favorite character. She was a role model. Laura and I talked about that a lot because there were very few role models back then for women.
Was true.
And people said she was evil, and she did some evil things. But here's what my thinking was. Here is a really strong woman who this man, this Barnabas Collins, really did a terrible thing to her and is continuing to treat her terribly. And she's getting back at him. She's standing up for herself. That's how I saw it.
Well, of course, I was a Dr. Julia Hoffman fan, and
Uh-huh.
she was my role model.
Right.
And I always thought they should have gotten together and just beaten the crap out of him.
Yeah. 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 You
That's
know.
why I liked the end point with Eve Green's. That That's her name, isn't it? My the actress who played her in Johnny
Eva
Depp.
Green. Yeah, Eva
Eva
Green.
Green. Thank you. I so liked that scene because it unified the characters, and she was sort of demanding his respect for both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the I wasn't a big fan of the movie, as you know. I
Me
gave
neither.
it gave it a pretty bad review that I'm still Jim Pearson is still not forgiven me. But I still call it Depth Shadows. But the one strong point of the film was Eva Green and the broadening of the character of Angelique.
Mm-hmm.
And poor Lara, I mean, she was only given so much. Well, they were all given only so much to do. And the characters were very narrowly defined by male creators for the most part, except for a couple.
You know, that's the time period, and the thing was, I was just eating it up as a kid. You know, I didn't see it as, you know, finely defined at that point as a kid. I just ate it up, and you forgot to mention Catherine Lee Scott.
Oh,
And
I'm sorry.
I just want to bring her up.
I'm in trouble now. Hi, Catherine. Yes.
Yeah, because she's amazing. She did a beautiful tribute on Facebook to Lara.
Yes. Yeah,
And
that was lovely.
yeah. And so yeah, I you know, as I worked with Laura on all the novels, she would just send them to me to, you know, critique. That's what I critiqued them. That's all I did.
Right.
To anybody else out there thinking otherwise, all I did was critique them. And help her sometimes when she got stuck. You know, brainstorming. What the things that writers do. That's what we do with each other. You know, and she read my work as well. And speaking of her being generous and stuff, she had published a short story in an anthology called Castle of Horror. I don't know which particular anthology she's in, but it's a Castle of Horror anthology. And she kept telling me over and over and over again that I should submit to them. And finally, I said, fine. Now, this was after the lung transplant. And so I'd gone for a lot of years without writing. Okay. But I had started writing again, and I wrote this short story and I sent it off to Castle Horror, and it came out in December of last year. And it was the first thing I published since my transplant. So I really owed that to Laura to get me, because I've had numerous things published since then, for giving me back my confidence and, you know, and everything. And she was right there, you know, through my transplant and that kind of stuff. Interested in, that's the thing about Laura. She was always interested in hearing about everything.
Yeah.
She loved life, and, you know, she loved hearing about life.
Yeah, she was there. Of the Dark Shadows people I've encountered, I think my most, obviously most of my memories are around Grayson, but my memories around Laura are significant, and Catherine, of course.
Catherine, yeah.
I sat.
I mean, they were kind of like at the conventions and things like that. They were kind of a duo.
Yeah.
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 So.
And you're over at Catherine's house, you're seeing Lara too.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why well, then again, Catherine has new people in her life, so
Well, her life has completely changed. So
Yeah, she's in
yeah.
a whole new area, and
Hmm.
well, a whole old area. And she seems to be happy. And Laura, um, and of course, we should be calling her Lamar, although I think everybody called her Laura.
I have a funny story about that.
Yes,
She went to, she got her MFA program from Loyola Marymount. She got her MFA. And she was an English teacher for a
right.
while there. Anyway, she, I can't remember how this happened, but I was talking to my friend Donna, okay, and we started talking, and I started talking about Laura, and I said, "Oh, she is from Dark Shadows," and she goes, "Oh, I just met somebody who was from Dark Shadows." I said, "Really? Who?" And she said, "Lamar Hawkins," and I said, "Well, that's Laura." And I could have
Yep.
called her. I could have called her Lamar, and we talked about that. We talked about whether I should call her Lamar or Laura. She goes, "I don't care what you call me." But I had known her for so long as Laura that I just continued calling her Laura unless we were in like a place where people really knew her as Lamar or whatever.
Right.
So, but yeah. So,
Yeah, I know that the one thing she couldn't stand was people calling her Lara. Uh,
oh,
and that happened a lot for some reason.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, especially the early days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they would come up and go, Lara, Lara. And she would say, it's Laura. And they, of course, well, on her second ShadowCon, which was ShadowCon 3, she was introduced by the person who was the host as Lara Parker.
Oh no.
And she then had to correct everybody. But
Right.
I know she told one story that I just loved about when she was teaching, and the fathers would be in front of her, and she was talking, doing the parent teacher meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and the fathers would be, and the mothers too, both of them would be looking at her. But in this particular story, it was the guy, and he said, God, do you know who you look like? And she said, Oh, Angelique from Dark Shadows. He said, Yes. And she went, I am. And he kind of went back in his chair. She says, I'm just joking. He said, I just said I'm a teacher now. But she said for a second there, he was really, really worried that his childhood had come back to haunt him.
Yep.
But, that's the key. And what I don't think a lot of modern fans realize is these people were huge in our lives. I
Ah,
mean, there was nobody bigger than the cast of Dark Shadows.
right.
And I try to explain that and try to explain the Cal Sills and a number of other people we all thought were just megastars, pardon me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they just now, they think,
Well, Dan told me that whenever they would have like parties or anything like that, that he would look over where the windows were, and there would be faces plastered against the windows watching them, and told me the amount of letters Dan loved to reminisce. So he told me all kinds of stories and that kind of stuff, and it's just amazing because I got to write the Dark Shadows audio dramas,
yes,
and I used I did because Angelique was my favorite character. She was in two of them, and then just Josette was in the last one. But and that's because I wrote the one where it's a trial between Angelique and Josette's trying to get the Dark Lord. He's the one overseeing it, to send Angelique to hell, and it ends up getting turned around, and Josette gets to go to hell. Oh my God! You would have thought that I killed the Pope.
Oh,
Oh my God, that was so. I went to Big Finish, and I said, okay, why don't I do a sequel? Okay, and so I did the sequel, and redeemed Josette. But boy, oh boy.
well, people tend to be very partial to their favorite characters, and I must admit I was very ticked off at the producers of Depth Shadows because of what was done to Julia.
That
However, we're going to
from
come back, and
it's from Laura's book.
yeah, but
I mean, Lara did it first.
yeah, I know. They always do that. They always rip off novels. I have a
Well, Lara actually sued him and got money.
good.
Yeah, because there
Good.
were a number of scenes directly out of her book.
Yep.
That
I heard there was a lawsuit in action. I didn't hear.
Oh yeah,
judgment.
Yep.
Good for her.
Yep, she got money, but it was she didn't think she thought that Tracy Curtis, who is now Dan's estate and that kind of stuff, didn't like her anymore because of that. And so she never tried to do another book after that. But she was also tired of doing Dark Shadows. I actually came up, because she kept telling me, the other thing she kept telling me to do was to write a Dark Shadows book. And I came up with a great idea for a Dark Shadows book. And I talked to her about it because I was hoping maybe we could collaborate, the two of us. I've never published a novel. I am publishing longer form right now, so I may do a proposal and send it to him. But she loved the idea. We talked about it a lot, and she called her agent, but her agent wasn't an agent anymore. And
that
she
tends
didn't
to be the way these days.
Yes, and she didn't think that that she could help me because of the whole lawsuit thing and that sort of thing. So right now, speaking of Dan, I just finished a Night Stalker novella for Moonstone Press. It will be coming out in February.
Wonderful.
And I'm doing another one for them with Sherlock Holmes in it as well.
Wonderful. I'm a big Shirley fan.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm writing that one right now. And then I felt like with all my media tie-in work and with these longer forms that maybe Tor would be interested in doing another Dark Shadows novel.
It's quite possible. Tor is a major market for Gothic horror and horror in general. In fact, well, we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah, this is but this is from Laura's encouragement. She totally encouraged me to do things, and she really wanted to be a literary writer. And what heartbreak I have is she has all these stories that are incredible stories that she's written and maybe sent out to one or two markets, and and didn't send them out again. And they're just sitting there, and now she's gone, and it's like,
well, now's the time for her kids to take up the spoil and go out there. And God knows there's the self-publishing venues now that they don't even call it self-publishing anymore. incentivized publishing, I think.
I have no idea.
But no, anything you were talking about regarding any of this is totally on topic. I was just keeping myself from going off topic because that tends to be one of my favorite things to do. But what I was going to say is um, have you considered talking to Jim about possibly compiling that work and
I haven't talked to Jim. I haven't talked to Jim in years and years and years.
yeah.
So have you?
No, I
I
haven't.
mean, he's not even involved in Dark Shadows anymore.
He's not. I mean, he's tall and silent, and it's sort of tall.
I have a soft spot for Jim.
He is a nice man. He is.
Mm-hmm.
All of the Dark Shadows husbands and wives have been nice people. Both of Catherine's husbands, and I haven't met the new fellow, but I was very fond of Ben Martin and very fond of Jeff. And
I only knew Jeff.
Yeah.
I only knew Jeff. I didn't know that.
Well, see, we need to do a reunion, and not for the general public, but a reunion of all of us who've been in fandom for 8 billion years.
Mm.
And
yeah, it's really funny because the truth of the matter is, and I think the reason I got along with Dan is I wasn't in fandom. I just happened to be a fan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more in fandom now because I, publish the graphic novels and I go to all of the conventions. And that's actually what I did all this last year. And I would send Lara little things about where I was and, how pretty it was, or if there was a certain cosplayer or things like that. But she was very tired, so she couldn't read a lot.
Right.
And, so we set up times and we would do Zoom calls. And as a matter of fact, sorry.
It's okay.
I had emailed her on the day she passed,
yeah,
asking her if she wanted to do a Zoom call. So, that's the way we kept in touch. We did Zoom, and she had this neighbor who did healings. And so she gifted Lara with a healing and had Lara invite all of her friends and family, which she did so. And then she invited some of us that could only attend via Zoom.
Right.
And so I was one of those people, and her newly found sister was there too. Did you know about her sister? Yeah.
I heard.
Yeah. And it was an amazing ceremony. And it was so beautiful and so full of love. And Lara told me later that she did not imagine how many people would come out and how loved she would feel and how many people loved her. She was just blown away by it all. And she did get to travel to see her sister. It was very hard on her, but at least she was able to do that. This was a sister that she didn't know about.
Okay.
And recently found and was able to go over to England, I think it was, and spend time with her. And she loved her. She loved her. She just thought it was great. And she was so happy at having to have found this sister. So,
That's
you
right.
know, that made the trip worth it for her, even though it was very hard on her.
Well, family was so important to her.
A family was the most important thing to her.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And Katie.
what a wonderful thing to, I mean, she led just a storied life in so many respects. And that as a capstone is the perfect one.
Well, because I'm doing this new Night Stalker novella, I've been watching Night Stalker.
Yes.
So the day I found out she'd passed, I turn it on and she's the guest star. I'm not kidding. This is true.
I totally believe you.
And I just sat there and I hadn't had the good cry yet. So I had the good cry because I just couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe it.
I
She'll
know.
be missed. She'll be so missed.
She's still with you, though. She's still.
You know, I do know that, and I have felt that, but I'm going to miss talking to her, and
Yeah.
I'm going to miss talking writing with her. She was so interesting and had some really interesting ideas about writing and everything. So
It was, I think, it. Your friendship with her, I think, has been very informing to those of us who, unfortunately, if you're in fandom and you're recognized as a fan, you never remove that taint from yourself. You're always
Oh, I
a
see.
fan.
Uh-huh.
And for some reason, I've never understood that because, I mean, some of what's his name, Paul Darrow, who was an actor who we knew in fandom circles, was a huge Elvis Presley fan and had gone to see him, but he never saw himself as being a fan, you know. But you were able to not. You were not in fandom. You were a fan, which is an entirely different thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Nancy Kersey is another one who, because she met with Jonathan on a professional level, she was not in fandom. So she was able to have a more professional, personal direct, whereas unfortunately, it's just the way it is. Once they identify you as being in fandom, you're kind of, a permanent child in many ways. I um, I suppose that's just to be expected because that's, you know, I know Lara was frightened in many respects by some of the wackos
Oh,
around,
yes. Yeah, yeah.
and we've all had to keep them at bay. So, unfortunately, because of the wacko fans, all fandom gets lumped into that. And
Well, she was invited at one point to come down to San Diego Comic-Con and do a signing at somebody's table. This was before I was publishing comics.
yes,
And she asked me if I would go with her. And I was like, well, yeah. I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con.
Comic
Yeah,
Con,
I'll
yeah.
go. And because she would get overwhelmed, when there's so many people, and it's very crowded at San Diego Comic-Con, and it's very hard to find your way around. And so it was just easier to have me there with her, and helping her get to where she needed to go. And being there as her anchor.
And it also it's important to go to any of those events when you're a well-known star, particularly an attractive woman, because you will have. I mean, I know of 2 or 3 different situations that I was present for
Mm-hmm.
that would have scared the holy crap out of me.
Mm-hmm.
And she managed to deal with it because she was learned in doing that. But you really can't appreciate their perspective, and I respect their attitude toward fans because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Till you see these people coming at her. I mean, one that used to just run for her, and I had to get in the way. And happily, my husband was there, so he helped me with the blockade. But it just we need to school fans. I'm afraid that these people are human beings and they deserve to be treated with respect in
You
the
know,
same measure.
I don't think it's that. I think that the fans, when they see somebody, it's about uh, the desire to meet them, to touch them, to get a signing, kind of like shortens out their brain. And I don't think that they don't have respect. I mean, some of them do, some of the scaries, you know, but um, I think that it gets so overwhelming that you're seeing these people who have made such a huge influence on your life, and the running for the thing, you can usually stop it and say, hey, wait, you're
Yeah.
going to scare her. You need to walk up like a normal person. And yes, you can tell her how excited you are, but
Yeah.
calm down,
Yeah, exactly. And they, we
Sometimes they
also,
hear you, sometimes they don't.
yeah, yeah. And if they don't, then, other
Then you
people,
do a blockade.
yeah, then you stick your foot in the way. But the, I'm glad to say that most of the time uh, I was present. Of course, I got out of fandom many years ago. Um,
And yet you're doing this show, Melody.
yeah, well, I think I do it just to give myself something to do besides write. I'm a
Hmm.
writer and I do this, and I'm a grandma. So and the wife and all that stuff. But
Well, that's the other thing. Laura loved her grandchildren.
oh yeah, oh God, grandkids. There's
I have to tell you, Laura did something for me. I wanted to do a short film, and it was based off of a short story I did called "The Girl Who Lost Her Way." It's kind of a folklore kind of thing. It's a story told that way. And I had art done, and what I was doing was it was actually in a PowerPoint presentation that went through the cards, and Laura narrated. She went into the studio for me and
oh,
actually narrated the movie for me.
it's wonderful.
I've never released it because there were some things we needed to fix on it, but I will probably now. I'll probably get it out and fix it and put it out as a tribute to Lara.
I hope so. But, well, my friend, we are up 40, what are we, 48 minutes? And I promised you only 30. So
Oh, okay.
I have overextended my welcome. But
Thank
I
you.
want
This has been nice to remember her.
it was so nice of you to join me. And I must say, the reason most of what we do on here is not fandom related.
Oh, okay.
This is an unusual step I'm taking because I knew Laura, and I'm still connected to a lot of the dark shadow stuff. But my life is, I haven't been to a Dark Shadows convention since I saw you at one. So that will tell you how long ago it was.
Right, right.
But most what we do is science fiction and horror, both written and media. So, my friend, thank you again for
You're
being with
welcome.
us. And stay healthy and happy. And we'll
Thank
talk to
you.
you soon.
And you too.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.